Alright, this is going to be as fast as it possibly can be on how to do adjacent zoning. So the prereq for this little tutorial here is going to be, I want you to read this ultimate guide to zones, because I'm not telling you how to zone, I'm telling you how to set up adjacent zones. And the adjacent zones part of this tutorial is down here, and it is the part that everybody always screws up, because you never really end up making a map that you can go linearly through. And what I mean by that is, you're going to have your start zone here in this example, and you could get to uh, train two different ways. So you could go from start to PPSH room to train, or you could go from start to middle to juggy to power and then to train. And the fact that you can go multiple ways to a room, that lets you know that this type of zoning is the way to do zoning. And this is the way to do zoning pretty much in general. So I have a little syntax bit set up here for when you're actually declaring the zones. And I've seen even some really experienced people screw this up still, and it kind of cracks me up, because I don't think people conceptually understand what they're doing. So I'm going to help you conceptually understand. So the first part of this is the zone you're in, the zone you're going to. This is kind of misleading, even the way I have worded it, because it's not really the zone you're in, and it's not really the zone you're going to. It's the two zones involved, and then the connection name between them. This would be, the connection name is the script flag, and that's what you're going to use to get the zombies to actually spawn. So you'll see that they call it a bunch of different things in there, like enter outside east, and then it'll say target outside east zombie spawners and stuff like that. So that's going to be the flag needed to actually spawn zombies. So I'll show you the checks that you can ultimately go through to be sure that your map is working properly with the spawners. So you're at start zone and you have two different options. You got the middle and PPSH room. So we're just going to dive right in here immediately and kind of steal this little syntax here. Just copy it, new line, and we're going to paste it in here. The zone we're in is going to be start zone. And then the zone we're going to, we'll do PPSH room. And the connection name, we'll call it PPSH room underscore 2 start zone. Now, this can be in any order. It could be start zone to PPSH room. What this is this is the connection. So let's set up another one, and it'll kind of make sense as we go along. Now, that takes care of the option to go to PPSH. So we just went from here to here, right? But we also want to set up the fact that we could have gone to middle. So start zone in middle. So now let's add another line. Start zone is next to middle, and the connection name, we'll call it middle to start zone. And you could have called this bullshit and it still would have worked. You could have called it cows. You could have called it anything. You just need to know that this is the script flag that you're going to call to spawn the zombies. It's easiest to indicate the two zones involved, and it'll make a little bit more sense when we go to our next example here of connecting options. So we can see that if you would have went to middle, you could have now gone to PPSH room, or you could have gone to power, or you could have gone to juggy. So we have to set up even more zones here to kind of take care of the fact that we can go multiple ways. So let's do middle here. And what I usually do is I kind of add like a space just to keep things in order in my head. So the zones involved here are middle and PPSH room. And now let's connect those rooms with PPSH room to middle. Okay. And what else is middle connected to? It's connected to PPSH room. It's also connected to power. So let's go ahead and add another thing here. Excuse the dog barking. Middle is next to power, and we'll call this power to middle. Okay, And again, following the same idea, middle is also next to Juggy, we called it, I think. Let's double check. Juggy. So, middle is next to Juggy. Juggy is connected to middle. Okay? And there's still even one more. Middle is also connected to train. So even another one here. Middle is involved with train. And train is connected to middle. Alright. And now let's go over to PPSH Room. This is going to reinforce kind of the premise of this entire tutorial that a lot of people really don't fully understand. Now we're going to look at what PPSH Room is connected to. It's connected to start zone and it's connected to middle. The question you're going to ask yourself at this point is, do I already have this connection set up? And we're going to look at that here. So we've got PPSH Room, and the cool thing about Notepad++ is if you have that, oh, look, it's not even doing it. So we're just going to see if we have PPSH Room involved at all in the flags with middle or start zone. And so we're just coming back here and we can see PPSH Room is connected to middle and PPSH is connected to start. But PPSH is also connected to train. And we can see by looking through here at our flags that we don't have PPSH at any point connected to train. So now we add another one. And the involved zones are PPSH Room, train, and train is connected to PPSH Room. And now we're just going to kind of move on to even another zone here, and it's train. We can see train is connected to what three zones? We got middle, PPSH Room, and power. Let's look at our little thing here for the check again, looking only through the flags or the connection names. And we have train connected to... Oh, made a typo there, look at that. Figuring out things. We have train connected to PPSH Room and train connected to middle. But we don't have anywhere train connected to power. So now we add another zone. Train is involved with power. I actually have that as lowercase power. And power to train. Alright, we're good. Now we're adding, we're moving on. So we can see now, let's look at train. We haven't looked at, or power yet. We haven't looked at power. We see power is connected to what three zones? To train, to middle, and to juggy. Now let's go for our check here and see if we have this set up. We have power connected to train. Power is also connected to middle. But power is not connected to juggy. So the zones involved, again, power, juggy, and juggy to power. And of course, I could have made some typos in here, so don't knock me for the typos. Catch their own typos yourself. Maybe you can catch mine. But I think we're pretty much set up here. So we're going to go through one more time and double check our connections just to be sure that actually all the zones are connected together. So again, start zone is connected to PPSH and middle. So two zones we're looking for that involve start zone. Start zone PPSH Room, that's covered. Start zone middle, that's covered. Moving on again to double check PPSH Room. PPSH Room borders 3 rooms. Start zone, train, and middle. Double checking that, we should have 3 zones that involve PPSH. PPSH to start zone. That's 1. PPSH to middle, that's 2. And there should be one more floating around in here. Train to PPSH, that's 3. We're good. Double checking train. Train is connected to what 3 zones? PPSH, middle, and power. And train to middle, 1. Train to PPSH, 2. And struggling to find this last one. Train is connected to power. And you can see here, power to train, and all these other examples with train, it was train to middle, train to PPSH. It actually doesn't matter. You can call it anything as long as you know that that's the connection between those 2 zones involved. So let's double check middle and make sure that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connections with middle zone. So let's just go right down the list. Middle to start zone, 1. Middle to PPSH, 2. Middle to power, 3. Juggy to middle, 4. And train to middle, 5. We got 5 zones set up for that. And juggy. So train, middle, juggy. We need 3 zones connecting to power. And let's look for power to train, juggy to power, and power to middle. 3 zones. Again, not repeating. There's only 3 that involve power. And double check the last zone, juggy. Let's check that. Juggy is connected to, let's check that first before I start going too fast, middle and power. So just 2 zones involving juggy. Juggy to power and juggy to middle. So hopefully this premise just makes sense. It might seem a little bit confusing at first, but just take the time to conceptually understand what's going on here. These aren't directions. These are connections. These are adjacent zones. If a zone is next to any zone, it needs to declare a connection. And then that connection controls the spawners. So hopefully that double check I did that last time through just to be sure everything was connected properly makes sense. And you can feel free to shoot a comment or a personal message to me. And hopefully you can get your zombies map pretty good, and hopefully it doesn't look like this, because if it looks like this, pretty much everybody's going to rag on you, but you're on your way to making something great. So